I live in the sewers. I was born down here, and I grew up down here. This is what my life is for. People would laugh at me if they knew. They'd mock me, call me crazy. But if they understood what I do every single damn day, what we protect them from, they'd be thanking us on their knees. Up there, people worry about paying bills, office drama, why their kid is acting weird. Down here, none of that matters. Down here, I have a job more important than anything they could imagine. My dad taught me everything. How to hold back the thing that lives deep in the wastewater system. Something you can't destroy. Something that keeps trying to come up. That's why we live down here, in the stink and the dark. So the people above us can live normal lives and worry only about what they're making for dinner. That's why I'm writing this now. So people finally understand what's living right under their feet. My radio suddenly crackled to life. "Chuck, come in, come in. You there?" Logan's voice buzzed through the static. "I'm here," I said, grabbing the receiver. "What's wrong, Logan?" "Oliver's not responding," Logan muttered. "Can you check on him? You're the closest." I didn't want to answer. I had finally settled into my little hideout for the night, and Oliver wasn't exactly great company anymore. Something broke inside him years ago, down here in the dark. He was stationed at the front gate, the place where the creatures would come through if they ever broke in. My dad always said there was no coming back from that post. I've lived in these tunnels for 20 years, and I'll admit it, I've never seen any of the horrors myself. But my father was convinced, knew it in his bones, that if we didn't keep the system under control, hell itself would break through. "Chuck, you checking on Oliver or what?" Logan snapped. "Stop drifting off." Yeah, I'm going." I fumbled with the radio. "I'll go take a look." "Copy that. And Chuck, stay sharp. Don't zone out." "Got it, Logan." I rolled my eyes, even though he couldn't see it. "Copy. Over and out." The radio went quiet again. I let out a long breath. Oliver was at least a 2-hour walk from here. And today, I really didn't feel like going anywhere near him. My father trained me well for this sewer life. I knew exactly how to get to Oliver without wading through waist-deep filth. And there was one rule he drilled into me more than anything else. Never go anywhere unarmed. He had this old shotgun he carried everywhere. When he died, it became mine. Same cracked leather strap, same weight on my shoulder, same lingering smell of oil and mold. He died young, only 53. The sewers don't treat people kindly. The stench. Yeah, that part never gets easier. It's the kind of smell that curls your stomach and sticks to your clothes for days. But I got used to it. Patrolling was the boring part. I knew every turn by heart. Which bulbs were burned out, where the concrete got slippery, where you had no choice but to step into knee-deep muck. That was when the mind wandered. I always found myself thinking about the things my father feared so much, wondering if they were real, wondering what my life would look like up there in the so-called real world, where you go grocery shopping, come home, watch TV, complain about your boss. I couldn't imagine it. Then something splashed, hard, a deep, heavy splash that echoed through the tunnels. I froze, brought the shotgun up, switched on my flashlight. The surface of the water rippled for long seconds, as if something huge had just moved below it, but the beam showed nothing. I couldn't stay there. If you linger too long in one spot, the dark starts paying attention to you, or whatever lives inside it does. I had to get to Oliver. That was my job. "Oliver, come in. You there?" I tried the radio as I picked up my pace. "Oliver, do you copy?" Nothing. Oliver was in his 40s, and easily the most unpleasant person I've ever met. He knew my dad back in the day, but something happened between them when I was a kid. They barely spoke afterward. And Oliver, he felt too at home down here, more than anyone should. I never liked him, but that didn't matter now. I was only a few minutes away. I knew exactly where his hideout was, straight down the long, dark corridor, past the runoff pipe, then right, all the way to the heavy steel gate. That was the first defense post. That was where Oliver was supposed to be. I just hoped I'd find him alive. I stood in front of the big steel door, but there was no sign of Oliver. The door was locked, and I couldn't even budge it. "Oliver, you in there?" I knocked hard. "Hello?" Nothing. The sewers were silent except for the distant trickle of water somewhere behind me. To my right, the way I'd come, the overhead bulbs flickered along the corridor, casting shaky light on the red route markers painted on the damp, mossy walls. To my left was only darkness, the part of the system no one ever went into, the place danger came from. As I stared into that black stretch of tunnel, something moved, slowly, heavily, like a massively overweight man struggling to put one foot in front of the other. "Hey, who's there?" I raised the shotgun and aimed my flashlight into the dark. I didn't get a chance to see. Something grabbed me from behind. A strong arm clamped over my mouth, cold metal pressed against the side of my neck. "Shut up," a man hissed, "unless you want them to hear you." I froze. The voice was familiar. I managed a tiny nod. A metallic click sounded, and the heavy steel door swung open. The man didn't release me. He dragged me inside, pulling me backward as the darkness behind us swallowed the corridor. Right before the door shut, I glanced over my shoulder one last time. That huge, lumbering shape was still standing there in the dark, silent, waiting. But I wasn't thinking about what it was anymore. I was finally starting to understand why everyone hated Oliver so damn much. Oliver's bunker was like stepping into another world. Past the steel door, it didn't even feel like the sewer anymore. It felt like his territory. He dragged me all the way to the center of the room before finally letting go. There he stood, half naked, his oily skin gleaming under the weak light, grinning that gap-toothed, unsettling grin of his, like he was waiting for me to compliment him. His bald head shone with sweat, and the smell coming off him. It wasn't sweat, it was more like machine grease. His smile managed to look friendly and terrifying at the same time. "Well, what's up, Chucky boy?" he asked once he realized I couldn't even get a word out. "Your senses wearing down already, or did that asshole never teach you properly?" "Don't talk about my dad like that," I frowned. "And by the way, Logan's been calling. Why aren't you answering him?" "Ah," Oliver waved a hand dismissively, rummaging through a pile of tangled cables. "Logan's just a self-important prick." "Oliver," I sighed. "He's at the sluice gates. If you don't check in, he's going to trigger a lockdown. We'll both be sealed in this tunnel." Oliver looked at me, not confused, not surprised. He knew exactly what a lockdown meant. He just didn't give a shit. He tossed the cables away and darted over to an old, sputtering metal stove. With the kind of recklessness only he had, he grabbed the hot lid with his bare hands and flipped it open. He dug around inside with a pair of long tongs and pulled out something charred and shriveled. A rat. "Why the hell are you eating rats, Oliver?" I asked, disgust twisting my stomach as he bit into it. "Gotta eat something," he said through a mouthful, chewing loudly. "And down here, this is prime protein." "That's disgusting," I muttered, turning away. "Logan can send supplies whenever. We're not stuck eating that." Oliver didn't respond. He just kept chewing that burnt thing as if it were a gourmet meal. I shook my head, waiting for him to finish. But he never got the chance. A heavy pounding slammed against the steel door. The sound was sharp, like a fist hitting metal, hard, angry. I spun around. Oliver froze mid-chew. The smacking and chomping stopped instantly. The entire bunker fell silent. And then, knock, knock, knock. Harder this time. Oliver went pale. A cold, ghost-white kind of pale I'd never seen on him before. I saw it clearly, the fear in his eyes. Real fear. The kind you don't question. They found us," he whispered, voice trembling. "Get back," Oliver snapped, jumping to his feet. "Move it, Chuck. This is not the time to drift off." My heart was hammering in my throat. I shot up, gripping the shotgun tight, staring at the steel door as it shook harder and harder. "Go!" Oliver barked, yanking me backward. "Run!" "Okay." I didn't think. I just turned and sprinted down the rear corridor. I knew this wasn't a drill. My whole life, my dad trained me for this exact moment. And still, I was running. Then I heard it. Oliver's footsteps behind me, followed by his shout. "Run! Move!" I bolted through the damp tunnel, pipes rattling along the walls, light flickering overhead. A half-lit storage room flashed by, and then, bam! I slammed into another heavy steel door, almost knocking myself flat. Oliver was a few yards behind me, his headlamp wobbling wildly as he ran. "Oliver, how the hell does this open?" I yelled, yanking at the handle. It didn't budge. "Move, kid," he shouted, shoving me aside. He started pounding on a tiny switch next to the frame, slapping it over and over like he was trying to wake up a stubborn doorbell. The door didn't even twitch. He kept hitting it, glancing back every other second. I finally turned too, shotgun tight against my shoulder. Down the corridor, between the pipes, something was coming toward us. Tall, lanky, human-shaped, sort of. Water poured off of it. Its skin glistened like wet clay, and long strands of dark green muck hung off its arms and shoulders, like lakeweed. My heartbeat stuttered. "Come on!" Oliver roared. "It's opening! Move!" The door groaned, clicked, then slowly, painfully, started to open. Oliver squeezed through and thrust his arm out toward me. I didn't hesitate for even a second. I grabbed his hand, and he yanked me inside with all his strength. "On your feet! Move! Line up, all of you!" A voice I didn't recognize barked the orders at us the moment we stumbled inside. By the time I registered what was happening, we were standing in a massive, dried-out water reservoir. The concrete beneath my boots was cold and slick with moisture. Oliver jumped up immediately and rushed toward one of the men, already talking fast. There were at least 20 guys in the chamber, all of them built like tanks, scarred, filthy, hardened by years down here, wearing torn gear, carrying rifles, pipes, makeshift flamethrowers. They looked like me, just tougher, more experienced, more broken in. I never imagined there were still this many of us guarding the sewers. "They've never made it down here, Oliver. You sure they're coming?" a big bearded man asked. "Of course they're coming," Oliver shouted back. "They're on our damn heels." The bearded man squinted at him, clearly unconvinced, at least until the heavy steel door behind us shook so violently it sounded like a car had slammed into it. The whole wall rattled. My lungs forgot how to breathe. Every weapon in the room snapped toward the door at once. "Prep positions," the bearded man roared. "Everyone, move! Flamethrowers up front!" The group scattered instantly, each person finding their designated spot. Metal clanged, rifles clicked, boots scraped. These men knew exactly what they were doing, and they were preparing to die if needed. The bearded man stepped toward me. "You, Chuck?" I nodded. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it was stuck in my throat. I suddenly felt small, out of place, surrounded by all these hardened fighters. "Good," he said. He leaned closer. "I knew your father. Hell of a protector." His expression shifted, hard, serious. "Now it's your turn. Time to prove what you can do." We all stood there, tense and silent. Every weapon in the room was aimed at the steel door. It had stopped shaking, but we knew something was behind it. The smell wasn't the usual sewer stench. It was worse. Much worse. The kind of smell people only describe one way. The smell of death. It didn't start with a bang, not even with a heavy impact. It started with a leak. A brownish-gray sludge began oozing through the hinges of the door. Thick, muddy goo seeping out through every tiny gap, like the door itself was melting, or like something alive was pressing through it. "Flamethrowers! Do it now!" the bearded man shouted. Two of the sewer guards immediately fired up their makeshift flamethrowers. I heard the gas tanks scream, the pipes rattle as they heated up, and then a torrent of fire blasted out. The flames washed across the steel door. The metal hissed under the heat, and from the other side, something started to scream, a thin, stretched, high-pitched wail that drilled straight into your skull, piercing, inhuman. Then the door exploded off its hinges. It flew forward like a bus had rammed it, slamming into the concrete and sending cracks spiderwebbing across the floor. And behind it was the real nightmare. A mass of brownish-gray sludge. Not a creature, not a shape, just a colossal pulsing mound of living mud that filled the entire hallway. And then, slowly, inevitably, it began to pour into the chamber. The flamethrowers shrieked as they pushed out more heat. Everybody pulled their trigger. 24 of us opened fire at once. Gunfire filled the entire chamber. The noise was deafening, so loud it felt like the concrete itself was screaming alongside us. The flamethrowers spat fire toward the mass. I fired too, as fast as I could reload. The shotgun slammed into my shoulder with every blast, but I didn't care. Everyone else's desperate fighting lit something inside me. For the first time in my life, I felt like a real sewer guard. The mass kept pouring out of the hallway. I watched bullets hit it and disappear, just swallowed whole. No effect, only the fire held it back. Every time the flames touched it, the thing recoiled, almost like it was afraid. Then one stream of sludge suddenly stiffened, and slowly, it rose, its shape pulled together, dripping, reshaping itself into a brownish-gray humanoid figure. a living, slimy mockery of a person. One of the guards ran up and shot it point blank in the head. The mass head exploded, splattering the wall behind it with disgusting chunks. He stepped back, triumphant. He never saw the second one forming right behind him. I did. The thing lunged, hard, like a tidal wave hitting a rock. "Help! Shoot me! Please, just shoot me!" the man screamed. Oliver was the one who granted his wish. One fast shot, one final scream, then silence. After that, everything turned to chaos. More and more mass creatures formed, rising out of the sludge. No matter how many we blasted apart, they reformed, pulling themselves together like living mud. 2 more men were dragged down, swallowed whole, swept away like pebbles in a rushing stream. Nothing stopped these things. "We have to run," a young guy in a baseball cap yelled. "You stay right here," the bearded man roared, grabbing him by the coat. "Oliver, the cans!" I don't know how Oliver heard him through all the screaming and gunfire, but he looked up and nodded. I was right beside him, stomach in knots, hands shaking but still loading and firing. My pockets were running out of shells fast and panic was taking over. I felt just like that kid in the baseball cap, like this was the end. 3 more men were swallowed by the mass creatures. They weren't fast, they weren't even especially strong, but they were impossible to kill. Every time we tore a piece off them, the sludge pulled itself back together in seconds. That's when something happened I never expected. Oliver kicked open a small metal panel in the wall. It didn't hide pipes. It didn't hide reinforcement bars. It hid cans. At least 20 of them, each one rigged with a pull pin. Oliver grabbed one, ripped out the pin, and hurled it into the mass with the strength of a damn Olympic hammer thrower. The greenish can hit the ground and exploded. A blinding column of fire shot upward. Even from behind cover, the heat wave scorched my face, burning the air in my lungs. The entire chamber lit up with flame, screams, and shrapnel, and the fight kept going. "Come on, help with the cans!" Oliver screamed at me when he saw the shells spill out of my shaking hands. I just stared at him, frozen. Oliver was firing his rifle one-handed while digging for another can with the other. I had to pull myself together. I grabbed my dad's shotgun, swallowed my fear, and sprinted over to him. From the wall recess, I yanked out one of the cans. The smell of gasoline hit me instantly. It was a heavy, nearly full 5-gallon can. "Pull the pin and throw it," Oliver shouted when he saw me fumbling. The pin finally gave way. I spun, hurled the can with everything I had, and it flew straight into the chaos. It exploded almost the moment it hit the floor. A column of fire tore upward, swallowing everything around it. For one heartbeat, I froze. It felt like time stopped. Everything was burning. One of our guys caught fire. He screamed and staggered before collapsing. Another was fighting for his life as mass creatures climbed onto him one after another. A third was already half consumed, his body sinking into the sludge. The stench of burning flesh mixed with the sizzling stink of the creatures filled the chamber. That's when it hit me how few of us were left, and how real the chance was that this chamber would become our grave. "Chuck, wake up, move!" Oliver yanked me back into reality. He tossed another can toward me. "Throw them, go!" On autopilot, I pulled another pin, spun, and sent the next can flying. Another explosion, more flames. The heat tore at my skin, but the mass creatures just kept pouring out of the hall. Every chunk we blasted off them only melted back together. "God damn it!" Oliver shouted. I finally saw why. 2 mass creatures had reached him, one wrapped around his ankle, the other coiled up his arm. Their bodies were swallowing him whole. "Oliver, give me your hand," I screamed, grabbing at him, trying to pull him free. "Get out of here, kid," he roared, shoving me away with his free arm. "Run, all of you!" Then, with the last strength he had left, he dragged himself toward the remaining cans. I knew exactly what he was about to do. There were still at least 10 of them hidden in the wall. "Come on!" The bearded man grabbed my shoulder. "Fall back! Everyone out!" Everything blurred after that. We ran through the corridor, water splashing under our boots. From the 20 or so men who'd been with us, barely 7 of us were left. I glanced back one last time, and then the explosion hit. The entire chamber lit up in a blinding roar, shaking the tunnel so hard dust fell from the ceiling. Flames shot all the way to the top of the reservoir. Oliver stayed behind, but maybe, just maybe, he stopped the monsters. I sat on the edge of the cold concrete. The wastewater trickled beneath my boots, flowing slowly back toward the chamber, back toward the nightmare we'd barely escaped. "You all right, Chuck?" the bearded man asked, stepping up beside me. "Yeah, I think so," I muttered. The stench still clung to the inside of my nose. Burned flesh, the sour rot of those sludge creatures, the acidic stink of fire and death. I could still feel the heat on my face, still taste the scorched air in my lungs. "Rest," he said, patting my shoulder. "You earned it." Silence settled over us. "What were those things?" I finally asked. "The filth that comes from above," he said without hesitation. "Everything people flush away." I didn't respond. What could I have said? For so long I thought we were guarding against invisible threats, that this job was more metaphor than reality. But today proved everything. I looked up. Sounds drifted down from above, filtered through an iron manhole cover. Light flickered across the damp concrete, and it sounded like 1,000 people were shouting at once. "Fireworks. Happy New Year, kid," an old man said beside me, forcing a tired smile. He was clutching his hand in pain. The burns were impossible to miss, his skin raw and red, still glowing with heat. "Happy New Year to you too," I muttered, staring at his hand a second too long before looking away. I tilted my head up again. Through the gaps in the cover, bursts of color flashed, reds, blues, golds, painting the sewer ceiling in brief, beautiful light. Up there, people were cheering, hugging, kissing, making promises they wouldn't keep. Down here, the wastewater kept flowing, and so did we. I watched the last firework fade and realized something that made my chest tighten. As long as they were celebrating up there, we would never be done down here.